Oh my God, esto va a ser épico, papus.
Victims do not encourage crime, but are victim prone because they reside in socially disorganized high crime areas where they have the greatest risk of coming into contact with criminal offenders, irrespective of their own behavior or lifestyle. Evidently, persons between the ages of 12 and 24 have the highest victimization rates for all types of crime, while those 65 and older have the lowest. Additionally, males commit more crime overall and more violent crime than females. In contrary, by committing a crime, the offender or the criminal must face the consequences that might happen. To begin, let me introduce myself first. My name is Ruth Cudal. I will be your reporter for today's topic. And I'm specifically from Bachelor of Science in Criminology 1-9, and I like to take this opportunity to talk about the victim precipitation theory and incapacitation theory. So please bear with me along the discussion. Alright, let's jump in. Victimology is the scientific study of victimization, including the following. First is the relationships between the victim and the offender. Second one is the relationship or the interaction between the victims and the criminal justice system. Third one is the connections between the victims and the other societal groups and institutions such as the media, businesses, and social movements. Crime victim is the term generally refers to any person or group who has suffered injured or lost due to illegal activity. The harm can be physical, psychological, or economic. Victim refers to a person to whom the crime was committed. He is also referred to as the complainant or the offended party. Also, victims can either be direct or primary victims, indirect or secondary victims, and that is according to Carmen 2012. Victim typology is the classification scheme that aids the understanding of what group of people has in common and how it differs from others. Victim typology then refers to the classification of victim based on their demographic profile such as gender, age, occupation, location or place of work, and the like. Alright, let me elaborate on this a little further since it had been discussed last semester. So, victimology tries to explain the relationship of offended party and criminal. It also tries to answer how does a person contribute to becoming a victim? What are the reasons a person becomes a victim? Why are certain people victimized more than the rest? And what makes a person a target of offenders? Also, victim calls as the forgotten person in the criminal justice system. So reason to that is mas nakafocus ang criminal justice system sa mga criminal or sa mga offended party rather, kesa sa mga biktima. Now, let's proceed to the main topic of the discussion. Let's first discuss what is about the victim precipitation theory. The phrase victim precipitation was first introduced by 20th century criminologist Marvin Wolfgang in his article entitled Victim Precipitated Criminal Homicide. In this theory, Wolfgang describes the victim as the first in the homicide drama to use physical force against his subsequent slayer. So, parang sinabi niya sa article na yon na ang mga biktima ang siyang dahilan kung bakit din nangyayari ang isang krimen. Victim precipitation is a criminology theory that analyzes how victims' interaction with an offender may contribute to the crime being committed. The theory is most commonly associated with crimes like homicide, rape, assault, and robbery. Like all criminology theories, victim precipitation relates to how and why crime happens, while most theories focus on the acts and intentions of the offender. Victim precipitation seeks to understand the interaction between the victim and the offender. In victim precipitation, the victim significantly contributed to his victimization. So, in a simplest way, the victim itself is also responsible why the crime is being committed. Yes. A good example for this is robbery. When four people boast of having money or shows off his valuables such as jewelry, expensive gadgets, and other similar items, then he put himself in danger becoming robbed. So, for instance, nasa isang mataong lugar ka. Halimbawa, ikaw si Mr. A. Si Mr. A ay napadpad sa isang mataong lugar. Halimbawa na lamang sa Quiapo, kung saan kadalasang nangyayari ang nakawan. Snatchan, ganon. Ikaw si Mr. A na dala-dala mo lahat ng gamit mo. Mamahalin mong gamit tulad ng alahas mo, mamahalin mong alahas, mga cellphone mo, gadgets mo, like that, mga iPhone, na high class talaga. And si Mr. B, na isang magnanakaw, nakita ka niya, habang naglalakad ka, napaisip niya na, paano kaya kung nakawan kong lalaking ko? O, diba? Napaghahalataan ka ng mayaman dahil sa itsura mo. In that case, maaari kang nakawan ng kahit na sino. Kasi, sa itsura mo pa lang, tas nasa mataong lugar ka pa, posibleng mangyari ang isang krimen. Madaling mangyari ang nakawan, lalo na sa mataong lugar. Siyempre, the more the opportunity for the criminals to commit crime, the higher the rate of the crime it will happen. Now, let's jump in the three facets of victim precipitation. First is what we call the victim contribution. Victim contribution briefly explains that the victim is the participant in the crime who acts first. Second one is the victim proneness. From the word itself, sila yung kadalasang nagiging biktima sa isang krimen. The third facet is victim provocation, which suggests that the victim is the primary cause of his or her victimization. We are now done in the victim precipitation theory. Now, let's proceed to the incapacitation theory. But first, let's define what is incapacitation. Incapacitation refers to the act of making an individual incapable of committing a crime, historically by execution or banishment, and in more modern times by execution or lengthy periods of incarceration, according to Britannica Encyclopedia. Also, within the criminal justice system, incapacitation is the response used when a person has committed a crime. By incapacitating the convicted offender, we prevent the individual from committing future crimes because he is removed from the society and locked up or restrained somehow. So, in a simplest term, incapacitation serves as the punishment for those who committed crimes. And in that way, government believed that crime would be lessened if criminals would be removed in the society. Incapacitation is also described as being one of the four goals of incarceration or imprisonment. Incapacitation comes first, and then comes from deterrence, rehabilitation, and finally retribution. The application of incapacitation. Now, let's talk about the application of incapacitation. Most commonly, the term incapacitation is reserved for individuals who are sent to prison or given the death penalty. However, it also includes things like being supervised by departments within the community, such as probation and parole. In some societies, incapacitation does not directly equate to imprisonment. It may involve corporal punishment or dismemberment. Western societies, such as United States and much more of Europe, as well as a number of East Asian nations, do not employ these tactics. However, chemical castrations, which includes court-ordered injections of a hormone that prevents the male offender from being able to perform sexually and may include minor surgery as well, has been used to incapacitate some sex offenders in both the United States and Europe. Here in the Philippines, the most obvious form of incapacitation is imprisonment. So the following slides is a related study or a related book written by David Carter entitled Incapacitation. Says that, rooted in the concepts of banishing individuals from society, incapacitation is the removal of an individual for a set amount of time, so as they cannot commit crimes in the society in the future. In British history, this often occurs on hooks. Hooks were large ships that carried convicted individuals off to faraway lands. The point was not to allow them to be able to commit crimes in their community any longer. So, kumbaga, lahat ng mga may sintensya or yung mga may mabibigat na kaso ay pinag-i-stay dun sa hooks na siyang malaking barko na lahat ng may sala ay siyang binibigyan ng leksyon para matuto, para hindi na rin sila mag-commit ng crime in the future. The theory of incapacitation assumes that the state has the duty to protect the public from future wrongs or harms, and that such protection can be afforded through some form of incarceration or incapacitation. Also, it enforces the idea that jail positively prevents people from committing crime. That is to say, by removing people from the streets and placing them in jail, those people cannot commit more crimes because they have been removed from larger society. This theory does not view jails as a deterrent or place to rehabilitate, but as protection to those who do not commit such crimes. As the theory goes, once a criminal, always a criminal. Therefore, if society starts by incapacitating the highest rates and most frequent offenders, additional incarceration will generate reduced benefits from incapacitation, as society incarcerates lower rate, less frequent offenders. And that's all for today's discussion. Hopefully, you have learned something and kumain ng masarap. God bless everyone.